Hi. Welcome back to #How to Run for Governor, Tennessee Political Structure. We have a pop quiz following this lecture so you'll know. Now we cover Chapter 4.
Article I, Week 4. Rights of Tennesseans cont. Technically, North Carolina lost control of the population, because just as the laws of man, King George III, and the laws of nature, hostile natives, came into conflict. Most of those living on the land had little problem with the natives. The natives only attacked the administration to remind them that it can't just continue to reinvent the wheel on a land that is already settled under another nation. That was their reversion to their English default again: claim everything you see that you want, and wait to see what you get. The failed state of Franklin was a second attempt to reclaim what North Carolina lost geographically and biologically, lasting only 4 years, 1784 to 1788. From 1788 to June 1, 1796, the Southwest Territory was for the most part autonomous, self-governing, and would be an excellent source of tax revenue from the corn, cattle and cotton that could be produced, but what to call it? From the Cherokee word Tanasi, the natives apparently won again. The settlers forced the honoring of its native name, for the governor has to be the biggest wolf in sheep's clothing in the state.
There are always elders who make decisions behind closed doors and present them to those who they choose to deliver at present. They could be as soft as a whispered helpful suggestion or correcting speech, not language. We are not sure which one, but some say diner and others say restaurant. Those who say restaurant agree that the French won in the area of the culinary arts, while those who say diner know little more than salt and pepper. So, when we say correcting speech every time North Carolina's name was mentioned, Tanasi would be echoed. When Franklin failed, the settlers said this is still Tanasi. But both North Carolina and Franklin failed where Tennessee prevailed, frankly, because they were too French, and the Cherokee and other native nations were being taught English by English to reduce the power of the Carolinian Empire Charlemagne, and then the French had the audacity to try to influence settlers' sovereign immunity, which is inherent in us all with Franklin.
Just as Native Americans only attacked administration, and 3/5 ths of men didn't apply, so too did the English seek out and find the oldest natives of the strongest nations and over time gain headway through familiarity and convenience. See, the English live on an island with limited space, so it is nothing to sacrifice one of their native sons to study anthropology in the deepest, darkest wilderness of Tennessee. They are not going to kill an innocent, hungry paleface who is lost, or yet and still got kicked out of the house and can't return until he recognizes the sovereign immunity all possess in himself. You can call it a study abroad program where they just throw you in a pit of snakes, and you have to either charm them or die. Outnumbered, the English rely on their wits above all, as they would prefer using them than resorting to the blood, sweat, toil and tears of manual labor. They prefer that, though, over death or the paranoid fear of it. So, the wigs worn by English judiciary represented the wisdom of age that their young missionaries sought in the Native Americans' hierarchy and planned to control. When one names a dog Scruffy, it begins to look scruffier than it actually is, because that name has a meaning that we attach to the animal, and it's the same way when noble names are attached, and one follows George Washington instead of George III. With all English claiming to be noble, however far down the line that innate sense of sovereignty we all possess pushes us up or down, we are placed according to our ability to communicate our intellect. So, through word-of-mouth advertising, repeating Tanasi every time someone said North Carolina, the Southwest Territory or the state of Franklin proved to win the day. Using phonics as a means of attack, the battle for Tennessee was lost by the colonists as they submitted to its name previously given. But what does that have to do with the rights of Tennesseans, and why is the name so important?
The name of the state determines everything that derives from it, and just as the colonists derived from the English Empire, so too are we as Tennesseans, promoting a nation other than English, red, and French, blue. The politics of Europe, if we hadn't dissolved our political ties, would have our land in a constant state of war. So, being settled prior to the English presence in the area, natives traded with colonists and formed treaties and contracts exercising the inherent sovereignty within us all, when they settled on the land. See, laws are often observations that those who feel it necessary write them down. Sure, people knew that every action has an equal and opposite reaction, but when Newton wrote the laws of motion, it just reaffirmed what hadn't been explained as clear and as understandable. You can't make up the laws of physics nor of man, but without initially defining man's inherent power to govern himself and his surroundings, motivation for achievement would seldom manifest itself. Protection under the law has its benefits.
Thus, as the population grew and settled in their new homes, the longer the family or community resided in the area was the more accepting they would be were the natives to win. Just as a news broadcast tries to report all the news in an area, and advanced equipment means it has a wider range, there will be more violent crime reported when the population addressed is increased, because the likelihood that it will happen is increased. Sure, hostile natives attacked trains and military positions for weapons, ammo, and other products they had become accustomed to, but for the most part citizens were generally happy, because information wasn't broadcast to the level it is today. But with the power inherent in the people of the area south of the River Ohio, they would neither sway toward either French or English persuasion, naming the state what it had been known as prior to the arrival of Europeans. The 11th Amendment paved the way for Section 1 of Article I and consequently subsequent sections further explaining rights of the citizenry. So, the people of the state saw fit to abolish America's re-implementation of the English system.
That concludes the information for this session. We will have the quiz after any questions asked are answered.